The day was quiet and gray, the kind of day when the air feels heavy and every sound echoes softly. Sarah sat in the lawyer's office with her husband and his parents, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her heart beating fast like a soft drum in her chest. She had loved her grandfather more than anyone in the world. He had raised her after her parents passed away. He taught her to be kind and honest, to see value in things that others ignored, to never laugh at someone's dreams now he was gone, and all that was left were memories in the small wooden box that held his last wishes. The lawyer, an older man with gentle eyes, cleared his throat and opened the papers slowly. The room felt cold as everyone leaned forward, waiting for their names to be read. Her husband's mother smiled with greedy eyes, already imagining what she might get. Her father-in-law tapped his fingers impatiently, and her husband, Mark, whispered under his breath, "Don't worry, honey, I'm sure Grandpa left you something nice." The lawyer began reading, his voice calm but serious. He mentioned some savings for one cousin, a watch collection for another. And then finally he said Sarah's name. "To my beloved granddaughter Sarah," the lawyer read, "I leave you my old van parked in the barn behind the house. May it carry you farther than you expect." The room went silent for a moment, and then the laughter began. Her mother-in-law burst out first. "A van, that old piece of junk, oh dear, what a generous gift," she said with a sharp laugh. Her father-in-law chuckled too. "Maybe it can be used for scrap metal. You could get a few dollars," he said. Shaking his head, Mark looked embarrassed. "Mom, Dad, please," he muttered, but even he couldn't hide his disappointment. He turned to Sarah. "It's okay, honey. Maybe it's got some sentimental value," he said softly. Though his tone was more pity than comfort, Sarah forced a small smile, her throat tight. She thanked the lawyer politely and left the office, her eyes burning. She didn't care about money. She just wanted something that showed her grandfather's love, not something to be laughed at. Outside, the wind was cool and the sky was pale. Sarah stood for a long time beside Mark's car, thinking about that van. She remembered how her grandfather used to drive it when she was a little girl, how he would pick her up from school with that same rusty vehicle, the windows rattling and the radio playing old songs. He always said the van had a good heart, though she never knew what he meant. Mark sighed and opened the door. "Come on, let's go see it." "Maybe it's not as bad as it sounds," he said half-heartedly. They drove to her grandfather's house in silence, the long road lined with dry trees and fading sunlight. When they reached the old barn, Sarah felt her chest tighten. The place smelled of dust and memories. Sunlight slipped through cracks in the wood, and there it was, the van, old rusty, and covered in a thin layer of dust. Her mother-in-law, who had followed them out of curiosity, laughed again. "Oh my. It's even worse than I imagined," she said, covering her nose with a handkerchief. "It's ancient," her father-in-law added. "You'd need a miracle to get that thing running." But Sarah didn't laugh. She walked closer, running her hand along the faded paint. The metal felt cold under her fingertips, yet something about it made her heart warm. It was as if her grandfather's spirit lingered there, watching her, guiding her. Mark looked under the hood and shrugged. "Engine looks fine, but honestly, it's not worth keeping," he said. "We could sell it for a few hundred, maybe." Sarah shook her head slowly. "No," she whispered. "Grandpa left it for me." "There must be a reason." Her mother-in-law rolled her eyes. "The reason is that he ran out of good ideas," she said. "Some people just get unlucky." And with that she walked away, laughing with her husband, leaving Sarah standing there in the quiet barn. The air felt heavy again, the sound of their laughter fading into the distance. Sarah opened the driver's door carefully. It creaked but didn't break. The seat was worn but still strong, and the faint scent of her grandfather's cologne lingered inside. It made her eyes sting with tears. She turned the key that was still hanging from the ignition. Expecting nothing, but the van surprised her. It started right away. The engine purred softly like a cat. Not rough, not weak, just alive. Mark stared in surprise. "That's strange. I thought it wouldn't even turn on," he said. Scratching his head, Sarah smiled faintly. "Maybe Grandpa knew something we didn't," she said quietly, her voice shaking a little as she looked around inside. She noticed a small piece of paper sticking out from under the passenger seat. She bent down and pulled it out. It was folded and yellow with age. Her grandfather's handwriting covered the front. Neat and familiar, it said only one line. "Look where the sun sleeps." Sarah frowned. Confused, her heart pounding, she looked at Mark. But he was already walking back toward the car, talking to his parents on the phone, telling them it was just an old van, nothing special, She looked again at the note, feeling a strange pull inside her chest. Maybe it was just an old man's riddle. Or maybe it was something more, something her grandfather wanted her to find. She took a deep breath. The sound of the engine still humming softly, the barn filled with the smell of oil and dust, and for the first time that day, she felt a flicker of curiosity, a spark of hope. Maybe the van wasn't just an old piece of metal after all. Maybe it was the beginning of something her in-laws would never understand. And somewhere deep down, Sarah felt her grandfather smiling, waiting for her to discover the truth that everyone else had mocked. The truth that would soon shock them all. Sarah could not sleep that night. The words on the old note kept echoing in her mind like a soft whisper in the dark. Look where the sun sleeps. She turned from side to side, her thoughts chasing meaning, her heart refusing to rest. She kept thinking of her grandfather's calm voice, how he always spoke in riddles that somehow made sense later. By early morning, when the first light touched her window, Sarah sat up. The van was calling her. She could feel it deep inside, a strange pull that she could not ignore. Mark was still asleep, his phone lying beside him, his mother's name flashing on the screen again and again. She didn't answer. She only whispered to herself, "I have to know," and quietly left the house. The air outside was cool and clean, the sky painted in soft orange colors. Sarah walked to the barn. The old wooden door creaked as she pushed it open. The van sat there like a sleeping giant, silent and still. The same faint scent of her grandfather's cologne filled the air. She smiled a little, remembering his warm hug, his voice saying, "You'll understand one day." She slid into the driver's seat. The old leather soft and cracked, and ran her fingers along the steering wheel. The same strange symbol caught her eye again, a circle with a small sun carved inside. She touched it gently and felt something move beneath it, a soft click. And then she heard a small sound near the floorboard. Something had unlocked. Her breath caught as she leaned down. She found a small compartment hidden under the seat, covered in dust and metal. She pulled it open with effort. Inside was a small box, silver and heavy. It looked old but not broken. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside she saw a tiny brass key, a folded paper, and a photo of her grandfather standing beside the van when he was young. She unfolded the paper carefully. The handwriting was the same as before, strong and neat. It said, "Willow Lake will show you what others cannot see." Sarah whispered the words under her breath, trying to understand. Willow Lake. She had heard of that place. It was about 3 hours away. Her grandfather used to take her there for picnics when she was small. They would sit by the water and watch the sunset. That was where the sun slept, she realized with a sudden chill. Her heart began to race. The note wasn't random. It was a clue, maybe even a map. She turned the key that was already in the ignition. The van started again smoothly, as if it had been waiting for her to return. She held the small brass key tightly, wondering what it might unlock before she could drive off. She heard footsteps outside. Her mother-in-law's sharp voice filled the barn. "Sarah, are you seriously wasting more time with that junk?" she said, walking in with her arms crossed, her father-in-law behind her. "Mark told us you've been acting strange since yesterday. We thought we should check." Sarah took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. "It's not junk," she said softly. "Grandpa left me clues." "I think there's more to this van." Her mother-in-law laughed loudly. "Clues, oh please. This isn't a mystery story, it's an old van." "Stop making a fool of yourself," she said with a sneer. Sarah's hands gripped the wheel tighter, but she said nothing. Instead, she turned on the engine. The soft roar filled the barn. Her father-in-law frowned. "Well, at least it runs," he muttered. "Maybe you can sell it for a few hundred." Sarah looked at them through the windshield, her voice quiet but firm. "I'm keeping it. I'm going to find out why Grandpa gave it to me," she said, then drove off slowly, leaving their laughter behind her. The road stretched out like a ribbon through the fields, golden sunlight spilling over the horizon. The van moved smoothly, not like an old vehicle at all. The steering felt light and easy, as if it was guiding her. Every mile felt like a memory. Her grandfather's voice seemed to whisper through the radio, which had suddenly turned on by itself, playing an old song she used to sing with him. When she finally reached the sign that said Willow Lake 5 miles, her heart skipped a beat. The place looked almost the same as she remembered. Quiet, peaceful, surrounded by tall trees and soft wind. She parked near the water and stepped out. The lake shimmered under the sunlight, calm and endless. She looked around, trying to find anything unusual. That was when she saw a small cabin near the edge of the woods. It looked abandoned, its roof half broken, but there was something familiar about it. She walked toward it slowly. The wooden steps creaked under her feet. The door was locked, and suddenly she remembered the tiny brass key. Her hand shook as she placed it in the lock. It turned perfectly. The door opened with a soft groan. The air inside smelled of old wood and time. Dust danced in the light, and there on a table lay a metal box with her grandfather's initials carved on it. The same symbol from the van marked on the top. Sarah's eyes widened. She walked closer. Her heartbeat echoing in her ears. She reached out and touched the box. Feeling the cold metal under her fingertips, she tried to lift it, but it was heavy, very heavy. She placed it down again, wondering what could be inside. Then she heard something behind her, the sound of tires on gravel. She turned quickly. Through the small cabin window, she saw a car pulling up near her van. She recognized it instantly. It was her in-laws' car. Her stomach tightened. They must have followed her again. Sarah stepped back from the table, fear mixing with anger. They didn't believe her. They thought she was foolish, but she could feel it. Something big was hidden here. Something her grandfather had trusted only her to find. The cabin door creaked again. Footsteps approached. Her mother-in-law's voice echoed cold and sharp. "So this is where you've been hiding. What are you up to now, Sarah?" she said. Sarah looked at the box on the table, the light from the window glinting off its surface. Her heart racing faster with each breath, she whispered to herself, "Grandpa, what did you leave for me?" And in that moment she knew one thing for sure. The secret hidden inside that metal box would change everything. Sarah stood frozen inside the old cabin, the air thick with dust and tension. Her heart beat fast, each thump echoing in her ears like a drum in a quiet hall. Outside, the van waited near the trees. Sunlight glimmered on its rusty surface, yet it seemed to shine with something alive, something that her in-laws could never see. Her mother-in-law stepped inside, her sharp eyes darting around the room. "What are you hiding, Sarah?" she demanded, her voice cold and suspicious. Her father-in-law followed, breathing heavily. "We saw you rush off this morning. Thought you might have found something valuable," he said, glancing around the small space like a hawk searching for prey. Sarah stood near the metal box on the table, her fingers resting on the lid protectively. She tried to stay calm, though her chest felt tight. "It's just something Grandpa left," she said softly. "I haven't even opened it yet." But her mother-in-law smirked. "Well, maybe we should help you then, since you're too sentimental to know what's worth keeping," she said, stepping closer before Sarah could stop her. Her mother-in-law reached for the box, but the moment she touched it, a faint sound echoed from inside, like a hum, low and strange. They all froze. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the floor. The air seemed to shimmer for a second, and then it stopped, leaving a silence so deep that even the wind outside paused. Her father-in-law looked nervous. "What in the world was that?" he muttered, stepping back. But Sarah's eyes widened with realization. "It's connected to the van," she whispered. "I can feel it." She ran outside quickly. The others followed behind her, confused and irritated. The van stood under the sunlight, quiet but steady. Sarah opened the driver's door and noticed a small light blinking on the dashboard, one that had never been there before. She touched it gently and it flickered brighter. Then a small metal compartment slid open beside the steering wheel. Inside it was a folded paper map and another key, this one silver with tiny sun symbols engraved on it. Her mother-in-law gasped, "What is that?" But Sarah ignored her. She unfolded the map. It showed Willow Lake and a red line leading farther north, toward the woods beyond the hill. There was a mark that said Old Station. Her heart jumped. Her grandfather had once told her stories about a secret workshop near the lake, a place where he worked on something special years ago. Her father-in-law frowned. "This is ridiculous. You're chasing ghosts." But Sarah felt something deep in her soul telling her to keep going. "I have to see what's there," she said quietly. "I can't stop now." She got into the van and started the engine. The sound was smooth again, calm and powerful. Her in-laws shouted for her to stop, but she drove off, dust rising behind her like a golden cloud. Her mind filled with memories of her grandfather's words. "One day the truth will find you." She whispered them softly as the van moved along the narrow path leading deeper into the forest. The road grew rougher, trees leaning close like they were guarding secrets. Yet the van handled every turn as if guided by an invisible hand. After what felt like hours, she reached a clearing where an old stone building stood hidden under vines. The words Willow Workshop faintly carved above the door. Her breath caught. This was it. The place from the map. She parked the van and stepped out. the ground covered with dry leaves that crunched under her shoes. She tried the silver key on the door and it clicked open easily. Inside it was dark and cold, but the moment she stepped in, lights flickered on by themselves, old bulbs glowing softly one by one, illuminating machines, tools, and drawings scattered across tables. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. This was her grandfather's workshop. Untouched for years, his handwriting covered the walls. Notes about engines, designs of vehicles that looked futuristic even now. She walked slowly, her hands shaking as she touched the sketches. Then she noticed a large tarp in the corner of the room, something big hidden underneath. She pulled the cover away and gasped. Beneath it stood another van, identical in shape to hers but shiny and clean, its metal glowing faintly, and on the front was the same sun symbol she had seen before, but this one had letters engraved below it. Project Solarheart. Sarah covered her mouth in shock. She began to realize what her grandfather had done. He had built something extraordinary, something far ahead of his time, a vehicle powered not by fuel but by sunlight. She walked around it, her eyes wide. There were small panels built into the roof, wires running through the body, and on the side was his name signed with pride. Suddenly she heard footsteps again. Her in-laws had followed her once more. "What is all this?" her father-in-law asked, his eyes wide with greed. "This could be worth a fortune," he said. But Sarah shook her head. "It's not for sale," she said quietly, her voice trembling but strong. "It's his legacy," her mother-in-law sneered. "Legacy or not. You're not keeping this all to yourself," she said. Walking toward the shining van, she reached to open the door, but a small spark flickered across the handle. She yelped and pulled her hand back. "It shocked me," she cried. Her face red with anger, Sarah felt a strange calm. She looked around the workshop and found a small metal plaque on the wall, engraved with her name for Sarah, the only one who saw the beauty beneath the rust. Her eyes filled with tears as she touched it gently. She understood now her grandfather hadn't left her junk. He had left her a secret that others would never have the heart to see. Outside, the sunlight began to fade. The van's panels shimmered faintly, glowing gold in the last rays of the sun. Sarah stood between both vehicles, the rusty one and the shining one. Feeling a connection deeper than words, she knew her journey wasn't over yet. The truth was just beginning to reveal itself, and what she would find next would not only change her life, but expose what her in-laws truly were, people who mocked what they could never understand. And as the evening breeze swept through the workshop, Sarah whispered softly to the air, "I found it, Grandpa. I found you." The air inside the old workshop felt heavier now. The light from the sun faded through the dusty windows. Sarah stood still between the two vans, one shining like silver and the other worn with rust, her hands trembling yet her heart strong. She could feel her grandfather's presence everywhere, his drawings on the walls, his notes across the tables, his dreams still alive after all these years. Her mother-in-law's voice sliced through the quiet, sharp and cold. "So this is what you were hiding, Sarah," she said, her eyes flashing with greed. "Do you even know what you found?" Her father-in-law stepped closer, his voice low but full of hunger. "This could make us rich beyond anything we've imagined," he said, his hands already reaching toward the shining van. Sarah backed away, her voice soft but steady. "It's not ours to sell, it's my grandfather's invention. He trusted me to protect it." But her mother-in-law laughed bitterly. "Protect it? You can barely protect yourself. You've been living off our son for years. You don't deserve this treasure," she said, her words sharp like knives. Mark arrived a few minutes later, his face pale and tense. He looked from Sarah to his parents, then at the two vans, his eyes wide in disbelief. "What is this place?" he asked. His voice cracking slightly, Sarah turned toward him, her eyes filled with tears and fire. "It's my grandfather's secret workshop. He built these with his own hands. They can run on sunlight," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Her father-in-law's eyes widened. "Solar engines. You mean this is clean energy?" he whispered, a greedy smile forming on his lips. "Do you have any idea how much this is worth?" But Sarah shook her head. "It's not about money, it's about his legacy. It's about what he believed in," she said firmly, her words echoing through the silent room. Mark walked slowly toward the shiny van, his reflection moving across its metal surface. "Sarah, this is incredible," he said softly. "But maybe your grandfather would have wanted this to help people. We could sell it to a company. We could make millions and still keep his name alive." His tone was gentle, but his eyes betrayed temptation. Sarah felt her heart twist. She looked at him with disbelief. You don't understand, do you? He didn't want greedy people to own it. He wanted it safe. He wanted it to belong to someone who believed in more than profit, she said, clutching the edge of the old table beside her. Her mother-in-law scoffed loudly. Listen to yourself, Sarah. You sound foolish. Everything has a price. And this thing will make us rich, she said, moving closer to the bright van again. But as soon as she touched the handle, another spark flickered, brighter this time. The air buzzed like electricity, and she yanked her hand away with a scream. It burned me, she cried, clutching her fingers. Sarah stepped forward quickly, her voice calm but fierce. You see, it's not meant for you. It knows who it belongs to. Her mother-in-law's face twisted in anger. You think you're special, she shouted. You think that old man loved you more than anyone else? Sarah's eyes softened with sadness. He didn't love me more, he just trusted me to see what others never did, she said. The room filled with silence for a moment, broken only by the soft hum from the machines. Sarah turned to the rusty van, the one her grandfather had actually given her, and she noticed something new, a small symbol glowing faintly on the dashboard, the same sun emblem. She walked closer, her heart beating faster. She touched the symbol gently and heard a quiet click. A hidden drawer opened under the seat. Inside was a stack of blueprints and a small leather book. She opened the book slowly. The pages filled with her grandfather's handwriting, sketches and notes, but one message stood out clearly. Written across the first page to my dearest Sarah, the world may mock what it does not understand, but truth shines only for those who see beyond the rust. Tears blurred her eyes as she read, her hands shaking. Mark stepped closer, his voice soft now. Sarah, what if we take this to the media? Show them what your grandfather built. People will finally see what he achieved. But before Sarah could answer, her father-in-law grabbed the blueprints from her hands. I'll take these, he said quickly, stuffing them into his jacket. If this really works, we can sell it and live like kings. Sarah gasped and reached for the papers. No, give them back, they're not yours, she cried. But her father-in-law pushed her away roughly. She stumbled but caught herself against the van. Mark shouted, Dad, stop! But his father ignored him. Heading toward the door, suddenly the van's engine roared to life on its own, a deep mechanical growl that filled the workshop. Lights flickered and the doors locked automatically. Everyone froze in fear. The silver van began to hum too, a soft golden glow spreading across its panels. The air shimmered with heat. Sarah's heart pounded, her voice trembling. Grandpa, what's happening? She whispered. Then the sound of metal shifting echoed from the corner. The blueprints in her father-in-law's jacket began to spark faintly. The lines on the paper glowing gold, he dropped them in shock. They landed near Sarah's feet, still glowing softly. Her mother-in-law screamed, Turn it off! Turn it off! But Sarah stepped forward, her fear fading into awe. It's protecting itself, she said, her voice calm again. It knows who should touch it. The humming slowed and the golden light dimmed gently, leaving the room silent once more. Mark knelt beside the papers, his eyes wide. Sarah, this is real. Your grandfather made something the world hasn't even seen yet, he said. She nodded slowly, wiping her tears. Yes, and now I know why he left it to me. He wanted someone who believed, not someone who wanted to steal, she said quietly. Her father-in-law stood in silence now, his face pale and ashamed. Her mother-in-law clutched her burnt hand. Glaring but saying nothing, Sarah looked at them both, her voice steady. You laughed at me. You mocked my inheritance. But now you see what it truly was. She bent down and picked up the glowing blueprints, holding them close to her chest. I'm taking this home, she said softly, and this time, no one is going to take it from me. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. The lake shimmered under the fading light, and as Sarah drove the old rusty van away, the golden glow from the dashboard reflected in her eyes like the promise of a future her grandfather had dreamed of. The night sky was deep and quiet as Sarah drove away from the workshop. The moonlight slid across the hood of the old rusty van, making it glow faintly as if it carried its own secret light. Her heart was racing, her mind spinning with everything she had just seen. She could still feel the warmth of her grandfather's words in her chest, the echo of his note saying that truth shines beyond the rust. Mark sat beside her in silence, his eyes darting between Sarah and the glowing dashboard. He didn't know what to say. The air between them felt heavy yet calm. The van moved smoothly as if it knew where it was going. Sarah gripped the steering wheel tighter, whispering softly, "Thank you, Grandpa." She felt a strange comfort, like he was right there beside her, guiding her through the darkness behind them. The workshop lights flickered once more and faded into the night. Her in-laws had stayed behind, too shaken and too ashamed to follow. Sarah could still hear her mother-in-law's angry voice fading away in her memory. "You'll regret this, Sarah, you'll see." But she didn't care anymore. She had found the truth, and nothing could take it from her. The road ahead curved around the lake, silver ripples shining under the moon. Sarah slowed down and parked by the water. She turned off the engine, but even with the key out, the van's soft humming continued, low and gentle like a heartbeat. Mark finally spoke, his voice quiet. "Sarah, I don't think your grandfather just built a solar engine. I think he built something even bigger." Sarah looked at him, her brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" she asked. Mark pointed to the faint light coming from under the steering wheel. "There's energy flowing through the whole vehicle. It's not just sunlight. It's something cleaner, something new," he said, his voice full of awe. Sarah's eyes widened. "Maybe that's why he hid it. He knew people would steal it," she whispered. She opened the leather book again, the one filled with her grandfather's notes, and began to flip through the pages under the soft glow from the dashboard. Near the end, she found a letter sealed with wax, her name written on it in careful handwriting. She tore it open with shaking fingers and began to read. "My dear Sarah," it said, "if you are reading this, it means you followed my path with courage and heart. The van you now sit in holds the first true self-charging energy system, powered by sunlight, air, and motion. It can run for years without a single drop of fuel. I trusted you with it because I knew you would protect it from greed. People will try to take it from you, but never forget. Value lies not in what people see, but in what they overlook." Tears rolled down Sarah's cheeks as she read. The words glowed faintly under the moonlight. She pressed the letter against her heart and whispered, "I won't let you down, Grandpa." Mark watched her quietly, his expression softening. He reached out and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. "He was right about you," he said. "You saw something none of us did." The wind blew across the lake, carrying the smell of pine and the faint hum of the van. Sarah looked out at the water, her mind filled with mixed emotions, pride, sadness, love, and determination all at once. She turned to Mark. "We have to protect this, not for money, not for fame, but for him and for what he believed in," she said. Her voice calm but powerful. Mark nodded slowly. "We could show the world the idea, not sell it, but share it. Make sure it helps people the way he wanted." Sarah looked at him with surprise. His words sincere for the first time in a long while. She smiled softly. "Maybe we can," she said. "But first we need to make sure no one else finds out too soon." As they spoke, a faint light began to shine from the van's front panel, brighter than before. Lines of gold spread across the dashboard, forming shapes like waves and suns. Sarah gasped softly. "What's happening?" she whispered. The van's radio turned on by itself, and a familiar voice came through, old and gentle, her grandfather's voice recorded long ago. "If you're hearing this, Sarah, it means the van recognized your heart. This machine listens not to words but to truth. It runs for those who care, and it rests for those who don't. Remember, invention without kindness is nothing." The message ended with a soft static sound. Sarah covered her mouth with trembling hands, tears flowing freely now. Mark stared in disbelief. "It's like he's alive in it," he said quietly. Sarah nodded. "He is, his spirit, his dream. It all lives here," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The air felt warmer, the van's glow pulsing gently like a heartbeat in rhythm with her own. Then suddenly bright headlights appeared in the distance. Growing larger, Mark turned quickly. "Someone's coming," he said, his voice tense. Sarah's stomach dropped. She recognized the car even before it stopped. It was her in-laws again, their greed stronger than their fear. Her mother-in-law stepped out first, her face hard and angry. "You can't just drive off with that thing." "Sarah," she shouted, "it belongs to this family, not just you." Her father-in-law followed, holding a flashlight. "We called a collector. He's offering a fortune for it. Give it up before it's too late," he said. Sarah stood tall beside the van, her hair blowing in the wind, the faint golden light from the dashboard shining behind her like a halo. "You mocked me for inheriting this van," she said, her voice steady and cold. "You called it junk. You laughed at me. But now that you know its worth, you want it?" She took a step forward. "This isn't yours, it never was." Her mother-in-law sneered. "You think you can keep it? You're just a foolish girl." But before she could take another step, the van's headlights flashed suddenly, blinding bright. The ground trembled slightly. The sound of the engine roared like thunder. Her in-laws stumbled back in shock, fear flashing in their eyes. Sarah placed her hand gently on the van's hood, and instantly the lights calmed. The engine softened to a hum again. She looked at them and said quietly, "It only listens to those who see it with heart, not hunger." Her words hung in the air like a spell. Her in-laws stood frozen, unable to speak. The moonlight shimmered across the lake as Sarah turned to Mark, her eyes shining. "Tomorrow we tell the world the truth," she said softly. "But not for money, for him, for everyone who ever believed in something beautiful when others laughed." And as the wind carried her words into the night, the van glowed softly once more, whispering secrets of light, love, and legacy that even the darkness could not hide. The next morning the world seemed different. The air felt softer, the sun brighter, and Sarah's heart lighter than it had been in years. She stood outside her small house watching the golden rays shine on the old rusty van parked in the driveway, the metal still glowing faintly like it was alive. She smiled quietly, knowing that her grandfather's dream was finally ready to wake the world. Mark came outside, holding 2 cups of coffee. His eyes tired but filled with something new, something like respect. He handed her a cup and looked at the van with quiet wonder. "It's strange," he said softly. "Last night, I couldn't stop thinking about what your grandfather built. He wasn't just making a car, he was trying to change the future." Sarah nodded slowly. Yes, and he believed the world wasn't ready for it yet, but maybe now it is. As they spoke, a loud car engine rumbled down the road. Her in-law's car appeared again, dust rising behind it. Her mother-in-law stepped out wearing sunglasses and false confidence while her father-in-law followed, holding a small briefcase. "Sarah, we talked to a collector in the city," he said quickly. "He's offering $7 million for that van. Imagine what we could do with that money." Sarah's lips curved into a small, sad smile. "We," she repeated softly. "You still don't understand. It's not for sale. It never was." Her mother-in-law crossed her arms. "You think you're some kind of hero, Sarah, but you're just sitting on gold and pretending it's a gift from heaven." Sarah looked at her calmly. "It is a gift, not for me, but for everyone who needs hope," she said gently. Before her in-laws could argue again, a car stopped at the end of the street. A tall man in a suit stepped out holding a camera crew behind him. "Are you Sarah Bennett?" he called out. "I'm from the National Science Network. We heard rumors of a van that runs on clean energy and we'd like to see it." Her in-laws' mouths fell open in shock while Mark whispered, "You told someone." Sarah shook her head. "I didn't. Maybe Grandpa's story traveled on its own." The reporter and his team set up their cameras quickly, their faces full of curiosity. Sarah walked to the van and placed her hand on the hood. The sunlight hit it perfectly, and the metal shimmered like fire. The humming began softly again, and the reporter gasped, "It's running without fuel," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. Sarah nodded. "My grandfather built it 50 years ago. He called it the Solar Heart. It uses sunlight, air, and motion. It can run for years without stopping." Her in-laws exchanged glances, their eyes wide and